Hey guys, welcome to Polygon Academy. My name's Tim, and more importantly, welcome to the very first vlog of the ArtStation Feudal Japan Challenge. So I've decided to document the process from the start to the end of creating a full AAA quality 3D environment. Just to give you some context about me, I've been working as a game industry artist for the last 10 years or so. I'm self-taught, so I only ever went to high school and then taught myself the rest of the 3D art process, and somehow now I have a job getting paid to make video games, which is pretty cool. I've worked at studios like Ubisoft, EA Montreal, Relic, United Front, Capcom Vancouver over the last 10 years on games such as Far Cry 4, Watch Dogs 2, Space Marine, Sleeping Dogs, a whole bunch of different titles. I'm gonna dive into the why behind why I'm doing this. But first, it's been a super long day. I'm gonna grab a coffee and then we can get into it. All right, so why did I decide to document this process? Well, basically, when I was trying to learn on my own as a self-taught artist in my parents' basement, there wasn't a lot of resources out there on how to get into the game industry or how to make environments. I mean, it's 10 years later, so there is more on YouTube now, but it was still a bit of a struggle. So I figured if I could document this process, a bunch of people probably could learn from it. And then I've always been harping on people to start documenting their creation process and start building an audience. So I figured I would start to back that up by actually doing it and showing my process of doing that as well. So over the last few months, I've written a few articles and put them out, and you guys' feedback has been super awesome. People have been hitting me up in the DM being like, oh, your article really helped me with a certain sticking point I had, or oh, this helped me get a job, or stuff like, oh wow, that's your article on motivation really helped me get through some blocks, and now I have like 2 new portfolio pieces done, which is super, super cool. Yeah, so first off, I just wanted to say a big thanks to anyone who took the time to read them, leave comments and feedback. It's been great so far. So for day 1 of the challenge, it just started yesterday as of the time that I'm filming this. Basically what I did is I decided to spend the few hours I had after work creating some mood boards. This is a pretty common practice that goes into planning a 3D environment. Just immersing yourself in a bunch of reference and putting it down, usually compiling it into one big image so you can quickly reference it and see all the planning and all the work. Remind yourself of anything you want to include in your designs or in your environments. I would say mood boards they're a great way to get excited about a project when you first start, looking at all the different possibilities and all the fun stuff you get to create in the future. It's a great way to break down either a concept or get in the headspace of this new project that you're going to create. And one of the biggest junior mistakes I consistently used to make, and I still do from time to time, is not using reference enough. And that's probably one of the biggest mistakes I see beginner artists make, is they try and make things from how they think it is, or how they think they remember it, or how it looked in another game that they kind of remember. And so they just start making art, and without using proper reference, it usually turns out feeling not quite right. So by creating a full mood board, you know where you're going, and you have something that you constantly have on maybe your second monitor, and just keep looking at it and fine tune what you're making to actually match the reference. So where do I get my photo reference? A big one, obviously, Google image search. That's probably the biggest heavy hitter. Usually we use it all the time. When I was building San Francisco for Watch Dogs 2, I was constantly using Google Street View and just Google image search. Another good one is ArtStation. Go look and you can usually use the search and type in, say, jungle environment, and 50 different concepts will pop up that you can then use as inspiration, or you can color pick from for your lighting, all that kind of fun stuff. Finally, there's Pinterest. Pinterest is super, super good. Pretty much every image on the internet has been added to that database, and you can just search, again, like ArtStation, search what your project is all about. In this case, I'm doing a moody Japanese forest, so I literally typed in moody Japanese forest. And then I just created a board and started adding all the images, like shotgun blasting, like every image I wanted to see, just going through and adding it to the board, adding it to the board, adding it to the board, because you can go back and refine your basically your image collection later on. But usually when you're starting off, you want to just grab as much reference as possible and just kind of hoard it and then refine it later on. Last night I sat down and I created a few mood boards. One of them is key images that represent all the elements I want to add to my scene. And then I also did a lighting one for the lighting and the mood that is more refining the overall final look of how I want the scene to look once it's lit, color graded, and all the stuff like fog and effects are added. And finally, I created one more. It's a super secret one that I don't think a lot of people think to do, but it's gonna come in super, super handy. And once we hop over to the computer, I'll show you that one as well. All right, so over here in Photoshop, you can see this is the main concept image I picked to do for the challenge by Vincent Lebocey. Sorry if I'm butchering your name, man. But, yeah, here's the real original color palette. I just did a quick brightness and contrast adjustment just so I could see more details in the image. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. It's like a really moody Japanese forest, obviously kind of haunted, I guess. So I'm gonna go for something along the lines of the original color palette, really foggy and using a lot of silhouette. So for the trees, stuff like that. You can see I kind of broke down the color palette that I want to use for the final image. A lot of greens, some grays for the rubble and the stairs and stuff like that. And then I decided to add a little kick color that I'm probably going to use for peeling paint on the torii gates, the stereotypical kind of like orange or vermilion, as it's apparently called. So yeah, and then maybe add some like little mushrooms or something like that too, with the same color kick to help balance the image here and there. So this is my key references mood board. So basically I just looked at the image and then I found some reference pictures that kind of match the overall vibe and the details that I'm going to use in my scene. So if I zoom out, you can see I gathered quite a few. So let's just kind of dig into it. So yeah, here's some little prop references of these kind of concrete or stone carved statues or lanterns or something. I'm have to do some more research and see what they actually are. And then I found some just some references of different kind of like old Shinto shrines and more torii gates in the forest, all overgrown with these cool kind of chunky stairs. Just more of the same, kind of just a daytime scenario, less heavily colored in this one. Then yeah, just more reference of general kind of like overgrown mossy stones and little props that I could use to scatter throughout the scene to add a lot of detail and just throw in some shapes real quick. And yep, more of this very same kind of images. You can see like a really recurring theme. I really like these chunky ripped up kind of stairs that are all old and crumbling. I remember playing God of War and being like really wowed by their stairs, and a lot of the scenes as you climb up them you get these really cool broken steps with lots of nice edge wear and detail. So I'm going to try and do some of that. Should be some fun sculpting for the scene. This one was really cool. I just like the grain green kind of palette and the level of overgrowth to incorporate. This one I found is a good reference because it has these white walls and wood trims, which if you look at the concept, it seems to be this white kind of plaster with a wooden trim work. Not super ornate and kind of damaged up. So I wanted to find a reference of something that's super kind of simple, and this is apparently a Japanese tea house. Yeah, just a lot more of the same reference. So you can see it's the same kind of stuff over and over again. Different levels of stone path work, and just different lighting scenarios and different sort of props and the way that they get these little light hits on them I thought was really cool. And it's just some reference of some of the sort of brickwork and retaining walls that were implied in the concept here. So just some texture reference and modeling ideas of how I can block in the scene. And yeah, this is the orange vermilion that I'm going to use for some of the torii gates and accent colors, but probably a more aged sort of moss-covered peeling paint version of this. Something actually kind of like this. It's this faded orange where the paint's kind of peeling away. I thought it was really cool. Yeah, so those are my key references. Kind of just dug deep on Pinterest and Google Images. Found some stuff I found inspiring and has a kind of consistent level of wear and tear and spookiness, like this one, pretty cool. Yep, so those will be what I'm using to construct all the basic building blocks and elements as I block out my scene. And yeah, again, just use a lot of reference as much as possible. And the more you use and the more you stick to it, the end results will tend to be a lot better than if you kind of just wing it and go with how you think things should work, because I can tell you from experience that usually leads to a lot of revisions and going and redoing stuff. So not too fun, but yeah, so do it right the first time. That would be my biggest recommendation, is stick to reference and avoid having to go back and fix things. So again, I included my concept with the original color palette. Just keep going back to that over and over again. My color palette again, just so I can easily color pick, especially when I'm going to maybe color grade or change the fog or add the lights and stuff like that. This image I thought was super cool. It's really moody. The fog is quite heavy. It's got almost the exact same color palette as what I'm going for, with the cyan kind of fog and the little orange accents. So that's a nice handy image. Yeah, super moody. I might not go this heavy on the fog, but it's good inspiration as a starting point. These ones I really like because it has the heavy fog, but also sunlight hitting through the trees. So you get this kind of dappled sunlight effect, which is definitely something I'm gonna be going for, with like the heavy overhead light coming down through to the forest floor. And same in this one, just these little sun hits, which if you look in the reference, or the concept, sorry, there are definite like implications of the sun coming through the trees here and there. So definitely trying to incorporate a lot of that. Again, more of the same, slightly more overcast, but the heavy fog silhouetting the trees, the color palette with the grays and the greens. This one from my other reference board as well, with a bit more heavy on the sun hits, so maybe a little too happy, but definitely helps show how you can use light to highlight the forms of all these statues and kind of the highlights hitting the tops of the bricks and the rubble. And then we're getting to some slightly more moody ones. Some sun hits on this one, but really kind of feels like it's a bit oppressive, and the forest is so dense and old that not a lot of sun is reaching through. Same kind of vibe to this one. This one actually kind of reminds me a bit of back home in Vancouver where I grew up. A lot of the muddy highlights from the mud and the puddles could be kind of a cool way to break up the ground, as well as having that overall like sun coming down from above, giving you that bit of a wash, which is kind of neat. And yeah, so yeah, if I zoom out, you can see the pretty consistent. This one, the color palette, I really like the super cyan fog and the really strong highlights on the lips of the stairs. Very cool. So yeah, zoom out, you can see it's all pretty consistent, which is great for a lighting reference. Like if I was working as a lighter and someone handed me this, I would instantly know pretty much how to get to like an alpha or a beta state in the lighting, and just really what the art director would want. I would just take this and run with it. So in this case, on this project, I'm obviously working as my own lighter and art director and environment artist, so it's good to have a strong plan from the start and keep things really cohesive. So yeah, and the third and final mood board that I made is one, it's kind of like the secret sauce that I would say, is a quality benchmark. And this is something a lot of maybe newer artists kind of don't think to do, or maybe they find like, oh, why doesn't my work look as good? And whenever I work on a project, I like to grab references of probably the best looking games or games that are in a similar vein to the one I'm working on. Yeah, this one. So the AAA quality benchmark. So I remember being really wowed by the Ghost of Tsushima, I guess, when they showed their E3 demo last E3. So I instantly, as the theme is Feudal Japan, so I went and grabbed screenshots from their gameplay demo. And some of them were actually a lot like the scene I'm going to be building. So this is great reference of what the current kind of like technical benchmark would be, what you can get away with, and what to aim for. So you can see they looks like they're quite heavily detailed. These are great because at a certain point of staring at your scene for a long time, you can kind of zone out or be like, oh, I don't know what to change, and does it look good? I can't remember. So by having this board, I can instantly go to it and be like, okay, my trees aren't high poly enough, or there's not enough ground density detail, or I can go crazier with the foliage than I thought I could actually do, or there needs to be more blending and interesting stuff going on in the ground. So it's just a good thing to hold your work up next to like screens from recent games and be like, does it match? Is it good? Does is my lighting the same brightness as an image? Because I find a lot of people, when they light their scenes, they tend to be either super dark or kind of like washed out. So you can, if you just take a screenshot and paste it next to this board, you can be like, okay, I'm hitting similar lighting values. It's looking similar quality-wise on the terrain. My foliage, is it super, super dense, or is it not dense enough? Because another thing a lot of people tend to do is have like kind of bald patches in their foliage work. They'll like paint some grass and then they'll have a few alpha cards of foliage, and it has this little weird patchy look. And you can, looking at this, and I mean, like looking at screens from the latest Far Cry and stuff, you can see that it's pretty okay to go pretty heavy on the foliage. Most modern hardware can handle it pretty well. So yeah, just great, awesome imagery. This nice mossy textures and kind of like old saggy stuff. This is definitely going to come in handy when working on the scene. And some good reference for puddles and ground blending and stuff like that. And those kind of standard old ancient roofs, very, very cool. And similar color palette to what I'm working on. So this was great reference. The guys at Sucker Punch are just killing it with this game. I think it's gonna be really cool. Then this one from the guys at From Software, Sekiro. Very cool. Again, just kind of like looking at the quality benchmark, what other studios are doing, and how far it needs to be pushed to be considered AAA, I guess. And some screens from For Honor, grabbed from ArtStation, from people's portfolios that are just super cool. Again, it just that reminder of how high detail you can go. Good references for a lot of the stonework and stuff like that. So very, very cool work there. Same thing, foliage references, sculpting on the bricks and stuff like that. So this is a good quality bar that I'm going to try and shoot for with my scene. And finally, of course, God of War, one of the best looking games to come out recently, and definitely super inspiring. So just looking at it, you can see the types of foliage density, the interesting composition, the way they light their scenes. Definitely going to come in handy for when I'm working on my stuff. Nice forest scene here. Just seeing how they do their fog, how they lay out their composition, their rocks, their moss, all that stuff. It's good to steal ideas from. Same kind of thing, this nice layering to the rocks that they did. Their environment, well, their whole team just really killed it with this game. So it's a good indication of something to shoot for in terms of a quality benchmark. I mean, it's pretty insanely, they're obviously super insanely talented, so who knows if I'll hit it, but definitely something to aim for. Yeah, so I would recommend finding some screenshots from some modern games that kind of match what you're working on, and having them on hand. and especially if you're more of a beginner artist, because it's easy to lose that quality target, or even by pasting your work next to it, you can see what is off about your work that maybe these guys or more senior artists are incorporating, like the level of detail that you need to be hitting, or how they're reusing textures and stuff like that, and or lighting their scenes. Just a lot of good reference points that you can pull from. So yeah, those are the 3 reference boards, the lighting, and my key images that I worked on last night. And next, I'm going to be moving on to blocking out the overall scene, just using a very simple geometry and laying it out in Unreal, choosing a couple probably key camera angles, and looking to where I can focus my time and attention to get the most bang for my buck when I'm composing the overall final image. Because maybe something in the background that I thought was important, if I was just to start quickly working on some props or something like that, actually doesn't turn out to be that super overall valuable of a time investment. So in that case, maybe it's not a good idea to put 10-12 hours into a barrel or a little statue or something like that if they're not actually going to be seen that much in the final end product. So yeah, and just a quick piece of advice. When it comes to blocking out your scenes, I would usually always start with the largest stuff first. And even when you go into building the art, always start with the large structural, biggest pieces of the scene. It can be fun and exciting to dive onto like little interesting props, but I find sometimes if you spend too much time on those, and then you're like, oh man, I have the entire scene left to do. Oh, this is it seems like an impossible workload. So if you do the big stuff first, it gives you the biggest bang for your buck, and it helps a lot with keeping the momentum going. So I always work from largest to smallest forms, and that way, you know, if time's getting tight, maybe the little barrels or little lanterns aren't as important as having you know, the trees and the buildings done, because that's going to be what takes up about 90% of the screen anyways. So that's where I'm going to focus my time. Yeah, final thoughts. I guess for me on this scene, the most challenging things are going to be probably the foliage. When I worked on Far Cry, I was a level artist, so I was doing a lot of, you know, placement and scene composition, but not actually making any assets for the game. So foliage isn't something I have a ton of experience producing. So that's going to be a fun challenge to get into creating these epic big trees. I think that's going to be really cool. Yeah, and the other main challenge is just the time frame and producing all this art on top of doing art on a daily basis at work. So it should be a fun challenge, and I think actually by documenting this whole thing, it'll be really cool and keep me motivated, especially if it helps I don't know, some younger artists or people that are looking to, you know, learn from other people's workflows and stuff like that. So anyways, yeah, let me know in the comments if you guys, what you specifically want to learn, or what you would be most interested in seeing me do. I'm probably going to do a lot of like time lapses, or just little, you know, documenting little interesting things, or shaders or stuff like that. Maybe not like hours and hours of modeling footage, because that can be kind of boring. But if I say learn something new and interesting, I'll stop and hit on that. I think that'll be probably the most interesting way of doing it, and that way I'll be able to keep these videos fairly short and insightful and interesting, hopefully, so you don't zone out. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this challenge. I know there's a lot of really talented artists getting in on it, so I'm excited to start blocking out the scene. And yeah, that'll probably be the next video, showing how that's going. All right, guys, I hope you're as excited about this ArtStation challenge as I am. I think it's gonna be really cool documenting this whole process. If you're super interested in following the journey, smash the subscribe button, give it a thumbs up, and consider leaving a comment either in the YouTube comments or on the ArtStation page if that's where you're watching this. And let me know any questions you have about the game industry, art processes, anything like that about environment art, and I'll do my best to answer you. Cool. Hope you have a good day and enjoy the challenge.